And we're live. So we will get into this review. So anybody that doesn't know, the RavenCoin white paper came out today, April 3rd. You can get that at ravencoin.org. And then if you're there, you go to white paper, and then you go to RavenCoin white paper. Now the X16R paper's been out for a while. And then you got the RavenCoin roadmap, which kind of bullet point versions of what's in the white paper. And again, this is an open source project that a handful of key contributors are I would call it being stewards to. So you got Bruce and Tron, both of which I've never actually met. So if we look at the very top of it, let's get into it. So, you know, from an abstraction, that kind of gives you a basic understanding of what they're looking for here. And then trying to differentiate what RavenCoin is versus what it's bringing, and any changes when they say they forked it from Bitcoin. So there are a couple key changes in this abstract piece. I would highlight the two main things really being the block time reward going to 1 minute versus 10 minutes. So Bitcoin has 10-minute block time rewards. That's when the currency is inflated into the system, and the people that are mining it fight for the option to write that next block and then win that reward. That is 1 minute for RavenCoin versus 10 minutes. And then the number of coins is essentially moved to 21 billion versus 21 million. Other than that, they're saying that the weighted distribution schedule and the asset creation side of it is all the same. And the introduction really comes into answering some of the mail when it comes to, okay, so what's the difference between RavenCoin and then something like RSK or Counterparty that also forked, and we're looking to do a color coins, which was distinguished asset, the asset trading where you could use essentially one of the outputs of Bitcoin into tagging messages essentially, and then using that as the asset storage. So if you can attach a message on a Bitcoin transaction, which that's what functions now, there's some drawbacks to that, and what they're kind of doing is setting you up for at least some background history on it in this section here that leads you into some of the other stuff that breaks down of why the current model right now is not so ideal, and the penalty for failure using just the native stuff that comes with Bitcoin when it comes to asset management. There's some issues with that. So if we go to section 2, which is the background on tokens and asset, actually I kind of jumped ahead, but this is a little more of a breakdown on the actual mechanical of what's going on when you talk about storing assets in the native Bitcoin blockchain protocol, and then what some of the issues are if you store and you write a transaction, you send Bitcoin with that, you lock it in, and then the recipient address then goes and accidentally either respends those and doesn't include that asset information. You can actually lose it. Bottom line, to break this down in English, that entire paragraph is just telling you that if somebody does the wrong type of transaction, you could technically lose your assets, and that's just not good, because you're essentially on the transaction output, you're not including that detailed information. So then if you're trying to move it, it's less than ideal. In addition, there's other ways that you can use Bitcoin to do that, and then have like its own special address. But then if you're trying to obfuscate that asset from a public view, if you have your like own separate wallet that's for those things, it's not ideal either from a privacy standpoint. So bottom line, the native functions that are in there is what they're really looking at addressing, to say here's kind of why we're not going this route. And then they also, in the second paragraph here under section 2, explain of why the problem exists with smart contracts that don't natively support certain tokens and are unable to protect against some other common problems. Bottom line, they looked at this also, and if you look at where the baseline of this has been rooted from an asset management, ASIC resistant, global standpoint, and you look at some of the potential issues here, you can see why an approach of taking Bitcoin's base protocol and then enhancing it specifically for assets is, the kind of path that they're going here with this. So that whole second paragraph is kind of setting up, hey, here's why we didn't go with these other two items here in the vision. And then number 3 is really kind of out of the entire white paper, the section 3 is kind of the main substance, I would say, of what these are. But essentially the full asset aware protocol is the so what factor. This is the enhancement. This is the code stuff of just not forking Bitcoin, throwing a name on it. and then creating memes to the moon, right? This is the vision of the stewards that really are trying to spark some development and collaboration on developing this protocol. And really, on an open source project, you kind of start that, you kindle that fire, and then you get a tribe essentially that'll help you keep it going, right? That's the whole point. And this section here, I see a lot of that where they're aiming to set the standard of saying, you know, here's kind of what we're looking for. Here's the first paragraph kind of lays it out. A system being aware of assets provide two major advantages. First, it allows the client and the RPC commands to protect the asset from being destroyed accidentally. So there's some protection in there, and it allows a native client to issue, track, and transfer the assets and funds. So, and then you have the underlying security of the proof of work system, supporting it agnostic to borders and all that. The second, that last part there is really just weighing on the fact of how proof of work is, you know, I would say the master way of doing this right now. There's a lot of argument on distributed proof of stake. You got EOS, you got Ethereum trying to go proof of stake. You got Dash with a hybrid system of having master nodes and all that kind of thing, of saying this is a better way. However, a ASIC resistant, a censorship resistant, and immutability, when you're looking at the most important thing of protecting the data, you know, does in a true proof of stake, whoever runs those master nodes has that ability. So who can get influence over, you know, I would say, I don't want to call it the biggest, weakest link on something like an EOS or any of the ones that are doing master nodes. And I'll probably go to my whiteboard camera for right now, and we'll come back to this. I'm going to talk proof of work and proof of stake and part of their statement there, and that last paragraph in the first section there is the power of proof of work, especially on decentralization, and, you know, to where anybody can participate around the world. You're really predicated on a few things. You're predicated on the max amount of available GPUs, and if there's already a huge distribution of those and you don't have your own fabrication center, you're essentially at the whim of what do you want to spend for GPUs. Now, you could do a global attack on proof of work on a GPU coin if you were a state actor and decided to say, you know what, I'm going to buy up all the GPUs right now for $4,000 a piece. That's a math problem. How many GPUs do they need to buy to incentivize people to sell them, to then take all the GPU power in the world and then try to do something bad with the currency? So, I mean, there's different attack vectors that people don't really think about when you're thinking of even decentralization. But that's a huge, huge issue to even try to enact. I mean, like, there's going to be, if you have somebody that's so apparent that's trying to attack it, there's going to be a de-incentivization. Oh, don't do that, no matter what the price is. But if you have a centralized entities or ASICs or conglomerates of large pools that have a large amount of centralized hash power going to them, can that one or two decision makers that are driving that, you know, all of that hash power be bought? And could they be bought to flag for something that's a contentious fork that goes back and rewrites stuff? People always ask, like, well, how can a proof of work system get attacked? It seems like grossly complex, and how are they going to rewrite the chain and all that? They can write software essentially to hard fork the network and then get enough hash power to then hard fork it with their reality or their changes or roll back something, right? That's kind of, there's a direct attack and then there's like a hard fork attack, right? So, like, it's not very ideal if you have a very huge distribution of hash power around the world that are in individuals' houses, right? You would have to attack it at the pool level and then somehow get the pool people to flip the switch, and then that would probably go viral real quick, and then you could yank your hash power. I mean, there's preventive measures on a distribution of GPU hash power. So what I'm trying to do is create enough content right now. I'm discussing of how and why people would be into GPU mining and why there's an advantage when it comes to security on that versus having a whole bunch of centralized entities, or even to distributed proof of stake. EOS is looking at 21 master nodes right now, right, for their public or for their main go live in June. Well, okay, who are those 21? How do they get selected? That's a lot of power. to ensure that those are the not just the token, folks, but they're also maintaining the network. So there's some questions with distributed proof of stake that need to be answered if you're going to put a lot of major assets and get global commerce going through it. And that's right now, frankly, why a lot of companies are starting with permissioned, private networks to kind of understand consensus, how that works, what are the attack vectors on that, what are the risks. And I mean, something like a Bitcoin, something that's highly distributed, is actually a lot more secure because of the distribution than like a private network that could be attacked. I'm in it every day trying to make sure that people understand the difference there. Let's put the architect hat on. That's kind of what I do to make sure that they have an awareness of, the different attack vectors there. But when you look at this, that's what they're really saying in that number 3, that fully asset aware system. And they make that first claim of saying, okay, we're going to build this system and we're basing it on the fact of proof of work. So it's kind of a long way of going to make sure you guys understood it. So that's kind of the underlying structure. So they get into this first part here where they start talking assets and kind of breaking them down of what it makes up an asset in section 3 here. And then how the assets are different between like something like Ethereum or Counterparty and that. And then uses for the assets. So this gets into the custodial stuff. This is the stuff we've always talked about in general when it comes to when we were talking Bitcoin in 2014 and 2013 about storing assets and storing items out there, and how could you keep this like reference data that's cross-border. If you listen to Patrick Byrne on any of his, and he's the Overstock CEO, he's involved in a lot of other things that are not Overstock. He's involved in a lot of initiatives that are third world, that are looking at economies of scale, looking at trying to get folks on a blockchain with their assets that would be agnostic to their government. That way, if the government ever changed, those folks' assets are still there. This is that kind of basic concept of where you could start to contextualize something of value with essentially an ID and a system of record that is agnostic to borders and control of somebody that would go in and change it. That's the basic premise of all of this stuff, is if you have something that you consider valuable, if you have a gold bar, which I don't have to consider that valuable, a lot of other people in the world consider that valuable, but if you had a tagging of that on an asset on a system that you could say is yours, then if that bar is tagged in a particular way, you could go to that system of record and say, that's mine, and here's why. Same thing, and it transcends the typical asset classes, and that's what they're trying to say here, I believe, is this transcends all the way to physical, the physical dollars, euros, land deeds. DC Comics presents number 26. Bottom line, rarity of something has an innate value. You could have an attached asset linkage to that, and owner, because if you're the owner of that, then that shows that you have that. You could keep it in a safe. You can make a trade of that digital asset and then get it moved from a safe versus, so if people are wondering, like, who cares if I have that asset? Why would I need a blockchain? Why would I ever need a blockchain to do that as well? If you owned DC Comics Presents number 26, I'm assuming, I don't know much about comics, but I'm assuming that's a lot. You would have that somewhere in a safe. You could make and broker deals because you have essentially a signature ID that says, I own that, and it's proven, and you can prove it yourself. It's a zero trust environment. You can go out there and validate it on the ledger yourself under the asset system, and then I can make the trade to you, and then the asset could get moved for some secure facility, or stay in this facility, never come out. Think of that. Like, you have something in a safe, and that custodial value moves over to somebody else. You exchange monetary of some way. Maybe it's more Raven coins, maybe it's euros or dollars, and then that asset never leaves its location, right? You're just changing the digital representation of that, and it's all being accounted for on a global system. That's kind of the basic concept there. Same thing with energy credits. If you were an energy producer, and so I'm kind of breaking down some of these use cases for you guys, and it's kind of going out of the RavenCoin white paper, but I'm trying to make sure you guys understand kind of the so what factor on what Raven, and there's other cryptocurrencies that are trying to do this too, but Raven looking at an asset protocol in general for theirs is the mainstay, is the reason why I'm sticking with this. But the understanding of that, what like an energy credit, if you live on a farm and you decide to put up a bunch of windmills because you can, and then there's a way for you to take and to distribute energy credits as value because you're producing more, that essentially ends up being tokens that you could go and exchange on some global market, while you have some guy in Europe, and if you're in the States, that your guy in Europe can't expend or use those energy tokens, but somebody else in your geographical area might, and now you have this whole like triangular kind of, or infinite amount of trades of those energy tokens because they're worth something, and then it ends up being repurchased by your guy down the street that you didn't even know was looking to buy, right? So that's the whole concept of commoditizing anything, essentially. And if you create the rel system for that commoditization, then new things will manifest you didn't even know are possible, right? So it's kind of happening right now in the digital world when it comes to like video games and trading skins and trading, all these different things. This is kind of letting loose essentially the functionality of that. Now we're just talking real world stuff tied to it. So it's something that's happening, but those are what you call stovepipe systems, right? If I'm going to trade stuff for Fortnite with people and drop them a good gun or something in Fortnite, it's only in Fortnite, right? And that's only because it's in their systems and there's no way for me to go out of it. Steam kind of created something like that for some regular gaming assets between a couple of their gaming assets to dollars, but this is taking that and facilitating a platform that then all these different places could build on. The last note that I had really on the number 3 asset kind of thing, the asset protocol thing, was that why that matters is there's a lot of companies that are trying to build their own. They're trying to build their own blockchains. They're trying to like, oh, we like this technology. We like the portability of this technology, right? Let's build a blockchain and let's get people onto air miles and all this. And it's kind of like, well, slow down. If you're building a private permissioned, let's say American Airlines only miles, and you have to be an American Airlines only member, you're not really doing anything more than what a database does. If you have something like a RavenCoin, which is the platform, and now there's an asset management system on it, a third-party company could then deploy their asset on there with all the idiosyncrasies of being able to transfer that, send it to other people's accounts. Then essentially the account holders are essentially getting RavenCoin accounts, and then all of that facilitation can happen. And it's on a global platform that you're not having to host up in a cloud environment. And essentially you're just paying to play on the crypto network that is already public and allows for the facilitation of a company to be able to deploy a particular token out there or an asset class and then be able to do that, right? And it's more simplified than having a more risk adverse or risk potential smart contract, because it's, from my understanding, they're looking to try to build it to have a little more wired up than just a open platform that you can really mess up the contract. If this is done correctly, you're going to have a few entry and exits, make it pretty linear on the asset trading pieces of it. There's a handful of requirements. I could think if I was building an asset system, I would think there's about 30 or 40 backlog items I would have in a backlog that I would need to make a fully functional asset management system. About 40 major items that would probably go into about 120 tasks. But that would be essentially the task order to just do asset management, right? Make it constructed to where it can handle just those major functions and not go, oh, but you can do 15 other things with it, right? Keep it focused. Let's switch back to this real quick. So then you have the representing a shared project. You have security tokens if you wanted to use this as like a security token, actually deploying a token. Well, reading through this, and I had a few folks actually looking at this when I was looking at it today, and they're like, oh no, they're going to have to register with the SEC. So if you're deploying an asset on here and it's straight up a security, then yes, if you're deploying that, then you're going to have to go register, but it should not impact RavenCoin as a platform. Much in the same way that people deploying ICOs on Ethereum, that are creating securities are the ones that have to go registered. But Ethereum as the platform isn't the one, creating that. It's the asset creator, right? So I think I'm not an SEC lawyer, but looking into the way I understand the current laws right now, I think RavenCoin would be safe. Again, not certified, but as long as they're just providing the platform that people could go do it on. I mean, it's one of those things that would probably get locked up in the court forever and then go in the favor of RavenCoin, I would assume. But if you're deploying an asset on there and it's for the shares of a company, you're a security. So, like, be smart about it. And then there's some tokens that represents co-ops, limited partnerships, royalty sharing. So essentially, they're just trying to cover the gamut of how would you split and dice, slice and dice company of projects or shares. You could use this for internal projects. If you were using RavenCoin to launch your own thing and you wanted to have some kind of shared partnership, you could actually have, instead of having something that is in just one person's computer. I mean, there's people that share, if you're a small project, you have like an Excel file that's sitting on a server saying, yeah, here's our work share, right? You do this, I do this, and then we split the profits this way. And it's literally on some dude's Excel sheet, right? It's totally okay. You can totally do business that way. But if that computer goes down or if somebody gets amnesia, having it out there deployed as part of a token solution, then it's out there forever and nobody gets amnesia. Representing goods and values, we've seen this. We've kind of covered some of this. Again, this is just showing the different use cases of asset to where don't get caught up that it's physical sometimes. I mean, the ticket pieces could be... so I'll briefly talk about this and we'll move on to section 4. So, like, when it starts getting into, like, tickets and company interactions with existing like asset platforms, something like that is a ticketing system. So if we take ticketing systems, and I've been involved with a couple different ticketing systems in my life. So that's an asset system. So you have so many that you will make, and it's pretty finite. So like if I have tickets to a stadium, most have a linear relationship from the ticket to the seat. So like the duplication is pretty apparent if you sell 2 of those and you go to a game and you're like, dude, you're in my seat. And I'm like, dude, I got the same ticket. Somebody's going to be mad, right? So like there's a pretty linear one-to-one relationship on ticketing. And then there's a finite amount for each situation, right? So you look over a timeline, how many events happen. So what I'm trying to say is if you build a ticketing system on a cryptocurrency platform, you're essentially inheriting an existing centralized database of when events are going to happen, what facilities they're in, and all of this other innate information that is super predicated on ticketing. So if somebody was to use a blockchain platform, I would look at it that they're doing it not to facilitate their ticketing requirements more than maybe the trading of said tickets to ensure that there's not duplicates. Like somebody kind of photocopied one and tried to sell it to you or something, that there's a certificate of authenticity, I would say. And that kind of concept more than facilitating a ticket requirement that, hey, the Ravens are going to start using cryptocurrency. They totally could do that, but it's just there's a lot of other like by purpose centralized databases on there right now. And until that entire ecosystem moves up into kind of a decentralized concept, it's still going to be super centralized. And you're doing a lot of effort to move it into a decentralized effort. And you got to look at how that's going to pay you benefits on a one-to-one relationship thing. But when you start talking virtual assets, a little different game, because you're going to want to cross maybe boundaries, territories, be able to start linking multiple virtual assets to where I could like trade wild gold for, a game that I'm playing in EVE or something, right? If I'm playing EVE online, I want to trade ISK for this. But then you start talking EULAs and all that kind of stuff, and are they going to partake in that? Huge different things. So I look at any of these cryptocurrency platforms that offer that opportunity to build those assets and then build the tools for somebody to leverage. There's a whole other set of ecosystem things that have to occur and people that have to get agreements, and not to even be confused from a AML standpoint, from the anti-money laundering, because ultimately one of the big things holding back all of these things are an adjudication process that needs to occur when you have assets turning into cash into an ecosystem of exchange, that the bad guys that are trying to do bad things, and I'm leaving that very bland and subjective for purpose, but if somebody goes to do you harm and you don't want them to do you harm, and they've used the tool of that's now a crypto network to do and facilitate that, you're going to want some kind of gate structure somewhere that allows the exposure of that activity for it doesn't happen again. Otherwise, like, the hammer comes down, right? The penalty for failure on this stuff sucks, right? Some bad shit happens, and then you're going to get the hammer from multiple G20 people. It's not just America coming down, right? So, like, they got to figure out, like, if you're going to start building those asset things. And this isn't, like, RavenCoin's issue to figure out. This is, like, they're going to build a platform, and it's going to be decentralized, and it's going to have these functions. And then it's on the rest of the community to figure out, like, okay, that's a cool tool set, and it works, and it functions, and it's got a robust mining community, and it's decentralized, and it's working. But how do we go and integrate and then cut through some of that AML, KYC architecture stuff that needs to occur? And then if I put the engineering hat on, I look at it from a systems engineering architect side of, like, okay, I have requirements that I want to go do. Do I want to go put it on a cloud, or do I want to try to put it on a platform like this and save a whole bunch of money because now I'm not have to pay for cloud services? But what are the other gates that I have to go through? Do I now have concern that I have to go do those other things? So that's kind of the structure of the asset side from kind of all angles that I look at it from, and then essentially what they've written in words of saying that they want to try to accomplish. The big takeaways on section 3, I would say, are that they're going to build a tool set, or they're going to attempt to build a tool set with current existing programmers that are on it, and I would assume put those out iteratively to where other people can contribute to them, and then help get some of those out and, you know, functional, and then testing and all that kind of stuff. Let's go back into 4. I'm going to get through this, and then we'll have a whole, like, hour or something if you guys want to talk in detail about anything I've said, came in late or whatever. We can get into it. Because I see a lot of good comments, people making comments too on it, and I want to kind of engage with that because I think that's good feedback stuff. Thanks for the follows, guys, too. We got RavenCoin launch, and so section 4 was just more of kind of the active due diligence. You know, hey, it launched in this particular time. It's more for proof of record, I would say, of saying, you know, here are the factual dates. If this is part of the reason why white papers and stuff will do this is because you got to look for what is the authority of when something happened and when are you going to get dates from things. I look at, like, a white paper should have, like, ground truth. So ground truth was announced on the 31st, 2017. Its binaries for mining were launched on January 3rd, 2018. Both of those things should be somewhat publicly verifiable. This is kind of just, here's what it is. And then kind of what reciprocated the X16R. Do subs get a snap? Yes, subs get a snap. They get a call out, bro. Subs are very nice. Launch with the token, no pre-mine. That's kind of what we talked about before. Again, this is just kind of a header. I would call this as required writing. If this was like a proposal, I'd say that this was kind of answering the mail on why did we do this, when did we do this, you know, what's its baseline. So we get into number 5, section 5, asset and assurance and transfer. And this gets into some interesting parts of when you build an asset system, but you also have like an asset assurance, meaning like what's its linkage to guarantee the authenticity of it, and then what are some other sub functions that you can actually do in this asset system, including giving us some insight that there's some token burn here. So that's an interesting case because there is a total of, and I believe Bitcoin has this too. has a burn, but the in specific functions, if you have a burn address, a known burn address, which just get locked up essentially. But when you go to issue this, it's essentially going to a burn address. So you're going to have, as people go and deploy, you're going to have a reduction of the currency's total available supply in the history of it. So that's interesting. So you will have some of supply demand effects on that eventually. And then the issue determines the amount of quantity issued, number of decimal places. Essentially, they're giving it an open piece to you to make changes to. Tightly integrates into the assets into the GUI wallet and creates new RPC protocols. That's kind of a requirement. That's a statement. So like if I was to break this entire white paper down into a set of requirements, that right there, that tightly integrated assets with GUI wallet, that's somebody telling me that they're going to go build that. So this is one of those things that if somebody took a critical view at the things being said here, these are kind of vision storyboard elements. So that would be a requirement that's out there that either they have the intention or the development skills to go build, and they're actually going to work on this and deploy it with a wallet GUI on the planned hard fork for this functionality, or they're going to put it out there and say, hey, that cool thing we said in the white paper, yeah, somebody needs to build that, and we need help. So I'd be interested to see as the development starts really ramping up here of on the contribution side, what the RIP, I don't know if they've called it officially RIPs, but they're Raven improvement plans. If they go to that, I'm coining it right now if it hasn't been said in their thing, in their GitHub, but if these are going to be out there as main functionality pieces. And then the combination of open source, shared incentive mechanisms enabled by the blockchain based on tokens enables interest to be aligned in ways traditional structures cannot. So essentially they're just saying that some of the incentive structure is set up to facilitate that. This section here, I'm kind of scrolling through. You guys can read through this on your own edification, but this is explaining that you could have co-ops relationships using this deployment of a token. So if you had like functional companies that had all this these pre-baked plans that had, you know, some basic business logic, they could essentially spin up a token, split it across them all, and simplify their accounting of any particular thing across multiple structures, and then leverage the token, a naming of the token for some kind of a redistribution of the profits, and that to show, you know, a staked ownership in it. So like Class A shareholders, Class B, Class C, each of those would have their own business rules. An event would happen, money would exchange, probably at the fiat level, and then the distribution to the shareholders would then be accounted for by the participants in that co-op. That's essentially what they're saying. You would spin that instead of having some kind of layered business logic in the Raven protocol, you'd have it in the asset side against a token, which would then facilitate all that transactional information. So that's essentially more detail on that. I had some notes on that. Let's see here. There's probability of what. So one of the big pieces out here, and this came up, and I got this as a note, and it's back here under 5. The big pieces I got out of that were protocol aware assets, hard fork plan. So a hard fork will be coming. Hard forks don't necessarily mean chain splits. For the folks that don't understand that, sometimes when you do like large updates to any of these cryptocurrencies, there is a hard fork that's planned, and then essentially a date is out there. The code is ready to go at a particular block where it will manifest. All the pools flag for it, and then they all understand that that's the new reality. If you have a contentious situation where a handful of people are like, no, I don't care for that, I'm gonna fork it, then you're gonna have this contentious fork, and you'll have a split of the assets. But it's just one of those risks that happen on an open source project like this. I think it's probably going to be one of those things that if you want to keep going down the other way without the cool toys, that's fine, and then somebody could do that. I don't think anybody's really honestly going to care. I think it's more of like, what's the vision, and does everybody go with it or not? So hard fork planned, and then asset management on chain, and then assets for RVN are to many. So it's a RVN to many. So it's a one to many on that relationship, meaning like on the protocol only you'll have unique assets, right? So unique names, and they have some details of what's and what we can scroll to what their examples are. And I think that's actually on the roadmap. They show the examples of what's acceptable, but it's essentially 3 characters. There's some operators you can't use. I mean, it shows you what essentially you can name an asset. So I could, like, the day this deploys, I could spend 500 Raven and go deploy BBT, right, and have a BBT essentially asset token. And then I'll own that forever. That's unique to me, right? What I see is, and I put this as a risk, is because right now it says essentially it's 500 Raven to do that activity. There's a good chance, I would assume, that with 500 Raven not being that much right now, there's probably going to be a lot of people that just want to meme the shit out of everything and then go buy like Nike and like all of the available 3-digit and 4-digit tickers known to man and go spend, like $100 because it sounds cool. That's part of the risk with it. And then since you own it, and nobody can take it from you, it's very interesting. It'll offer a very interesting dynamic when it comes to people, how they're going to get approached. Like if Raven really takes off and companies start attaching to it, and then there's all these like random people that just went out there and created tokens on behalf of 3-digit, 4-digit names, like how that's going to work. But I mean, it happened in the centralized normal world, like when who was it? It wasn't Netscape. Network Solutions, I think is what the name was. I'm dating myself here, but when Network Solutions was doing .com, .edu, and .gov, like a whole bunch of random people went out and bought like Gateway.com and they're like Steam.com. There was all this like fighting of like the naming, and it's like a new protocol, a new thing, and then people go squat, right? So I think this will be probably handled in the same kind of way. Maybe there might be some incentive structure or somebody will sell it. I mean, who knows? But that's just one of it. There's only one of them. It's unique. So I can see that happening the second this thing goes live. So that also comes in, and I'm going to get to these Twitch Primes, guys. Thank you for the subscribes, Override and Schmozer. I can see the day that this goes live, people just go out there and just start registering a whole bunch. So for the people that sit there and look at market on a hard fork, if you look at a functionality that is put in place that requires you to purchase the main asset to go deploy, what happened with Ethereum? That's all I got to say. So if there's a lot of people that care and there's a vision forward on this token management and the asset system looks robust, and if we have access to a testnet beforehand to understand that, I think it's going to predicate very heavily of like, yeah, this is good, and this may solve some of the asset stuff that's out there. And then you're going to have this, I mean, it's a pretty cheap buy entry. 500 Raven is not that much right now to deploy your own asset. So it should be interesting. That's the one thing I got out of that, out of 5, having the unique names, and that's in there explaining that. Number 6, I remember those days.coms. Oh, yeah, man. I got some old ones, man. I've been in that space for a long time. Let's see here. Let's go down. Rewards. So rewards, this was essentially just that kind of, I looked at this as an extension off of the number 3 when it came to the distribution. So like, I guess it's an extension off of 5. But so if you make a token and then you separate its distribution across, let's say 5 people, right? And everybody has, let's say they invested money, and they use an example here of if you invest money, like if you had 10,000 lemonade tokens at a penny a piece, it's $100 investment, right? And you just move the decimal place a couple of times over on the 10,000, you have $100. Well, then if that lemonade stand generates, $100,000, right? Now everybody should get paid $1, right? So that is essentially, or it'd be 10 cents. But, if it made $1 million, now I'm making $1, right? So the auto distribution, because you already had a set price was in play. I donated a penny, or you had 10,000 people donating a penny to get the $100 initial investment. When that revenue side would come in from whatever, you could use this functionality to do simple accounting for you and then distribute profit across all the shareholders. So it has, what they're saying here is they're going to have a functionality built in to be able to distribute a payment dividend system based on token holders and paid out in a basic methodology. This stuff's not like groundbreaking. It's pretty basic on rewards, the way rewards work if you had a token-based system. It's just saying that they're trying to answer that functionality. Unique tokens. This is kind of that I already kind of jumped into this, the unique token piece of it. But being able to offer a distinguished cryptographic proof, essentially, as part of the system. It even says there as ERC 721 tokens are guaranteed. Unique. This is not also groundbreaking. Some of that's out there. This is just showing you some innate functionality that if given various scenarios in software development, game assets, RV and base assets, you could create that unique identifier to the public assets. So this is kind of giving some insight into that section 3. I look at section 3 as being kind of the awareness that there is going to be a protocol and that they're going to be adding some functionality and tools and commands and stuff. This is kind of the reciprocation of it. This is what happens as part of that unique token piece of it there. And they give you some examples there. Those last pieces in here, and there's not a lot of depth in these last few, and I have some statements on these ones that I kind of wrote. So not a lot of depth on what 8 is. And again, this is kind of later in their, and I'll kind of come to here. This is kind of later in the cycle here. So it looks like right now their bulk of their work is on the asset protocol side. So that's number 3 and number 5, with probably playing into some of 6 is really what's on the next on the, based on what I'm reading on the roadmap. And then you can kind of see that some of this other stuff is not really fleshed out. It's more of kind of like, so looking at messaging details, messaging services. There's a protocol that's called that I have no idea what that is. KAAAWWW. And it could be just a placeholder. I don't know. There's no references that are found with that on what that is. I could talk a whole thing on like using blockchains for like SMS type of communications, and some of the use cases I'm going through right now of why some of it's kind of probably a bad idea for all kinds of reasons. And it really comes into like that layer 2 and 3 requirements that we're going to end up having to probably get into before we're going to want like SMS style messages like Telegram or any of that kind of stuff being on a blockchain. Because blockchains are honey badgers and they don't care and they don't forget. So if you've done or said something and 15 years later culture changes and now you're blasted because that can come up, we're human and we're fallible and we learn from our mistakes. and if our mistakes are etched in stone and then could be leveraged for the incorrect reasons for people, that's where I get into like the messaging side of blockchain stored messages. When it comes to general conversation, as a culture, as a people, as a everything, we are not evolved fast. We are not evolved past that point yet to allow that kind of messaging interface to be locked into something like a messaging service, in my opinion. And all I got to say is just look at Twitter. So, and Twitter actually is being augmented by bots that are writing things to blockchain. So a lot of like prominent people that use Twitter, it's going to haunt them for the rest of their lives. Especially if they're super opinionated, right? So there's certain things that are just kind of like, until we can evolve past it, maybe, that certain things probably should be captured for systems of record. That blockchain is phenomenal for systems of record. It's exactly what it is at the end of the day. It's a no argument. You digitally sign that. Your bot is sensitive. Yes, I need to peel back the bot some. We getting people kicked here. The message interface, there's not a lot of detail on there. I think that time will help solidify maybe what that's going to happen on there, and then maybe some different decisions. That leads us into voting, which is number 9 in the white paper. That's a whole other one that is that's subjective for all kinds of reasons too. There's a lot of counter argument. Richard Hart covers this a lot on Bitcoin when it comes to when people wanted to use voting for it. If people know your vote, you can there's an incentive to buy that vote. That's part of the risk with voting on if you keep it obfuscated enough to where like think about a traditional voting booth. And I'm not even going to get into I will get into it. Like when you go to vote, you go into a room and nobody else sees it, right? I mean, but you cast your ballot, right? And then it goes through a scanner. So to have it on a public piece and then be able to, you got to make sure that there's obfuscation there, but you can make sure the record accounting has occurred one time with you, right? So there's mechanical things that need to occur to make it really, really solid for voting. That right now, if you can get any leverage on somebody on that, you got to make sure you can't. And then but I think we could work through the privacy layering piece to ensure that one person's voted. I think over time that can happen. And if this ends up being a protocol that allows for that more seamlessly because the feature set's there and then it makes sense for people to plug into, that's great. However, there's a risk at the speed of voting is one of those things, like it happens like November 4th, like the whole US. What protocol in the public facing side could handle the transaction per second that's going to be required for voting? None of them, unless you go to layer 2 stuff. Layer 3, where you'd have to have lightning channels set up, so there's going to be some predication before you're going to have a system that is not going to get bogged down and have massive transaction pools because you're going to have 30 million, 50, 80, 20, 120 million people on the same day voting. You're going to saturate that network. You're going to saturate that entire transaction pool like beyond. Because your voting is like singular in a day usually, and sometimes even on very peak times, right? Like it's 5 o'clock and I'm off of work. I'm gonna go press some buttons. So you're gonna have to create a layer 2 kind of solution for that, and then a standard for the lightning channels, and then how do you make sure everybody's on, to where all that works. So there's a lot of like structural stuff that has to occur to make that work from the voting side. 10, privacy. This one was a lot of promise to improve, but no specifics. We all know Bitcoin is not 100% private. There's a handful of cryptocurrencies that are not, especially when they go through certain gates. but there was kind of like a, hey, if we really care about privacy, people, it's open source. You can offer some solutions for it. But for the main focus of this white paper, they just kind of answer the mail to say, yes, we believe in privacy, but it was really no plan with privacy. And the additional stuff, I think, was honorable mentions because they were going to get asked anyways, which was the, the Omni layer stuff with RSK, Lightning Network, confidential transactions, which could be that layer 2 stuff, potential SegWit, scaling, maybe answering some of those questions that we were just talking about with voting. And then they just kind of talk through, they explain what unspent transactions is, which is essentially how Bitcoin and that protocol kind of functions when it talks about like a cash type of system where you spend that unspent transaction to make a new transaction. That's essentially white paper. So I went through kind of everything I talked through here. I would say in a nutshell, it's just coming forth and saying, yes, officially, RavenCoin wants to focus on a asset management system with a set of functionality. It's going to be, open source. When they go to deploy it, it's going to be through a hard fork. I don't believe, let me look here on the roadmap, there was timelines. Timelines are like the bane of existence for developers. So timelines are good. I like agile approach where it's fixed time, fixed people, variable content. But if you have an open source world, it's kind of it's not that, because the folks are donating their time for this. And since it's since this was a fair launch, and you have to mine it to get it, like there's no like where you have like Dash and you have other things that have facilitations in place to pay for development. I mean, this is open source, so having a dedicated community looking for a better solution, says something.